We started this class as strangers from across the country on a Zoom call. Many of us had never taken a class about corals, let alone seen a healthy reef ecosystem. But all of this would change over the course of 3 weeks of our summer. This is the story of our time in the International Research Experience for Students program in Australia.
The wet tropics of Queensland stretches along the northeast coast of Australia. Consisting of mostly tropical rainforest, this stunning, beautiful area is extremely important for its rich and unique biodiversity. One of the first things we did was explore one of the giant fig trees found in the area. We saw many of these throughout the trip, and each one was seemingly larger and more unique than the last. We then ventured in search of platypuses, but were unsuccessful. Michelle Barnes and her PhD student from James Cook University joined us later that week. We were engaged with a bunch of activities and lectures surrounding the subject of social science, something none of us were too familiar with, but we were really surprised as to how much connection and overlap there was with social science and marine biology. Lake Barine was one of the major highlights of the trip. It is a huge crater lake which we learned about its creation from Siggy. When we first started the walk, I think we were all surprised to see someone scuba diving. We were also accompanied by none other than Jordan's boyfriend, who came along with us. As we progressed through the trail, the water was surprisingly clear, much more like a natural spring than we originally thought. We then visited a plant nursery which does amazing work restoring the rainforest. It was their 40th anniversary, so it was quite a treat, and the whole town comes out to the facility to celebrate. We spent the rest of the day with Siggy, involving some questionable activities like Krista trespassing for a rock, but we saw an amazing waterfall and some fruit bats. The week ended with a barbecue on one of the other crater lakes nearby. We all left with smiles and excitement to finally go to the Great Barrier Reef.
Our second week began with a surreal plane ride over the Great Barrier Reef to an exotic location called Lizard Island. After landing, we made our way to the research station where we would be living for the next 2 weeks. After getting situated, Lyle, the co-director of Lizard Island Research Station, walked us through the facility and gave us some demonstrations of safety protocols. This is a picture of our living quarters called the Suntory Cabin. From there, we went to gather by the sunset and ended our first day in paradise. Our gatherings for the sunset served as a great opportunity to meet other researchers at the station and unwind from the day's lessons and research gatherings. Our first guest lecturer, Charlie Barron, the godfather of corals, arrived the following day and taught us a history of corals and the effects climate change has on these ancient creatures. Charlie went into great detail concerning mass extinction events and the compositional makeup of our atmosphere and how it is changing. We spent a great deal of this week both in and on the water around Lizard Island. We quickly became accustomed with many of the sites we planned on conducting our independent research projects at. While we explored these sites, we searched for unique-looking corals to photograph for Charlie to later identify in another lecture related to coral taxonomy and morphology. During our time in the water, we saw a variety of different types of animals, from exotic fish such as triggerfish, clownfish, and filefish to much larger critters like sea turtles and sharks. However, the most incredible thing that we saw was a lush coral reef. It was explained to us that both coral bleaching and cyclones have wreaked havoc on the reefs around Lizard Island, and after 5 years of recovery time, Acropora has become the most abundant coral on the reefs due to their fast growth speeds. As the week came to an end, we partook in a long-standing tradition, the Saturday night barbecue. Here, we gathered at the picnic tables on the beach at night to cook dinner together with everyone at the Lizard Island Research Station. We had the opportunity to discuss research findings and future research amongst scientists and network. Overall, this first week on Lizard Island was a week that we will never forget and will certainly impact our lives as future marine biologists.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Santana and today I'm going to talk about the day we spent in Australia with Morgan Fratch. Morgan Fratch has been tracking down the Great Barrier Reef for many years, really constantly, so he knows about the change that have been running in the GBR. Between the topics we discussed with him, we can say coral sampling was one of the best topics because he showed us that point intercept transfer, it was a quick and easy way and also the best one because we can make reproducible data from the many older research that have been in the Great Barrier Reef. And he also taught how many sample points should we have between how big is our project running. Another thing we discussed was the coral identification. For this time, we used the Coral Finder, which is really for the Indo-Pacific. It was really a good experience because we usually go to the campus, take some pictures, we go to the reef, and we came back to the classroom, and then we trying to identify the genus of the coral, and sometimes we also identify the species. He also talked about the brown tongue starfish, better known as cods, which one the cods have 42% of causes of coral loss in the GBR. This is how they look in the coral reef, and scientific and diving community has been coming together to kill these starfish because they are really big problem because they don't have predators that kill them. And in this graph, you can see how in the 2015, it was decreased the amount of coral reef dead because of them. We have an opportunity to spend one more day with him. It was really good experience because he taught about the efficient and effective way to write a scientific paper.
Our final guest lecturer was Dr. Brad Iyer, a biogeochemist from Southern Cross University. His time with us on Lizard Island involved a crash course into biogeochemistry, a topic none of us were too familiar with. After his introductory lecture, we headed out into the field to try out using benthic chambers for ourselves in a mangrove environment. The first and probably hardest step was to bury the bottom half of the chambers in the sediment. We then attached the cables to the battery, injected acid into 2 of the chambers at different concentrations, and took measurements such as salinity, temperature, and dissolved oxygen before letting the water advect for 45-minute intervals between samples. Half of our group stayed to finish the field exercise, while the other half headed back for some more hands-on experience. On brand with our efforts to gain a broad transdisciplinary approach to coral reef science, we gained some experience studying reef fish behavior in various environmental conditions. We reconvened later that evening to discuss the field exercise and calculate the flux of oxygen between the water and the sediment. The next day, Brad gave a lecture on another ongoing project, and then in the afternoon, it was time to have some fun. We took the long, grueling hot trek up to Cook's Look a historically important area on Lizard Island where Captain James Cook climbed to the top to try and find a way to navigate out of the coral labyrinth surrounding the island. Not everyone made it up the slippery, steep cliffside, but for those of us who did, the views were spectacular. We quickly made our way back down the mountain through the rain and the wind to make it back to the research station by the end of the low tide. The next day, we had to say our goodbyes to Brad, and before we knew it, we were at the last few days of our trip here to Lizard Island.
We started this class as strangers on a Zoom call, but we left Lizard Island as friends and researchers equipped with the power of transdisciplinary coral reef science. But our skills expanded beyond the classroom and into the field. After loading the boat and mooring at our field site, we gained valuable skills in coral identification and conducting point transects at Mermaid Cove. We also improved our knowledge in boating operations and knot tying. And when we were all done for the day, we'd retrieve the anchor. A grueling task that was always worth celebrating when we were done. Having little research experience before this, we improved our data collection skills both underwater and in the lab. Even though at times those skills were a bit unconventional. Not many people can say that they learned from the top coral reef scientists while watching sunsets at Lizard Island Research Station. As we departed the island, I couldn't help but look at the reef with a newfound appreciation. Each organism, from the tiniest nudibranch to the most vibrant fishes, all serving their purpose to create a breathtaking ecosystem and a lifelong memory.